Hello and welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul, co-host Justin Baker in the house as we get ready to break down the 2019 NHL entry draft, along with lots of trades and the upcoming July 1st free agent. Although we are in the interview period and we have lots to get to, a ton happening in the league. Justin, Moritz Seider. That's where I want to start.
You're starting big here.
That's where I want to start. You're a Red Wings fan. The Red Wings went, from what I could tell, and most people could tell, including all the people I was watching on NBC Sports because that's the stream that I get. Liam McCune, he was pretty surprised. He's the guy.
He's the guy.
That's the guy. Craig Button, he's going, what the frick? Wow. Like it felt like a reach. I think we were talking before the show. He was generally in somewhere between the 20 and 30 range in mock drafts because mock drafts are just insane. In this draft, it was like you could be 11th or you could be 40th, as Valiev saw, that Russian sniper, right? Something like
yeah.
Yeah.
Cole Caulfield.
And Caulfield too.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's talk about that. I want to get your thoughts because it felt like to me the Red Wings could have traded down. We did see a trade. The Flyers traded their 14th and the 45th pick to move up 3 spots. So Arizona was able to pick up a mid-level or mid-round second round pick, really for moving up 3 spots. To me, it seems like the Wings could have gotten at least a second round pick to shimmy back a little bit and still taking the same guy. But
I wonder if, because you look at what Arizona and Philly both drafted defensemen, right, with those picks in the first round. And so Philly, obviously, I think what they were seeing was after Edmonton taking Broberg getting off the board in Detroit, right? They get this feeling, oh crap, there's going to be a run on defensemen because they talk about it after Bowen Byram, right? There's like the next tier of defensemen, right? There
right.
Possibly could be guys that could be top 4 defensemen in the league, but there wasn't a surefire like top 4 defenseman like this kid was. And I think the Wings probably trying to trade down. Philly probably wasn't offering anything like that to him because they didn't think there was going to be a run on Demon, at the time at number 6, right?
Yeah, but was there not a team who was? I mean, we're talking about a guy. The Wings picked a guy who, let's say at best, he goes 13, 14, 15, something like that.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Like was Moritz Seider really higher than like Victor Soderstrom was? He was picked right around where he was, and Cam York. Same thing. Thomas Harley. All these guys were picked relative to where they were taken. I mean, there was 3 defensemen taken in a row after Thompson and then Haniloa and Samuel Poulin, then Tobias Bjornfoot. So there was quite a few defensemen. Poulin, not a defenseman, but the 4 of the 5. So it seems like they maybe could have gotten their guy if they had just even, was there a chance that somebody else wanted to move up? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised when you look at like two picks, for example, Dylan Cousins and Trevor Zegras, 2 big centermen that I think really could have made a difference on a lot of teams. And you know how valuable centers are in today's NHL. And to me, that's kind of shocking when those 2 guys are available on the board at 6 and nobody wants to even move up a few spots to try to secure one of them. Yeah, so I was kind of shocked that nobody wanted to trade down. And maybe Eisman was asking too much. I mean, that's a possibility. Maybe he was like, I want 2 first-round picks this year's and next or something. And everybody was like, no way. See ya.
Yeah.
So,
I suppose if you're asking, like, obviously the Wings didn't want to move too far down. They wanted their guy. I mean, I guess you can also look at it like this. You're picking 6. You don't have a choice as to where you pick. You're just picking. I mean, he wasn't even here.
Right.
So if there's a guy he likes, then you just take him and you just go.
That's the thing.
That's fine. We're picking 6th. If we were picking 9th, we'd pick the same guy. If we picked 12th and he was available, we'd pick the same guy. So we don't really care. We just want to guarantee we get this guy. And if he feels that strongly about Moritz Seider, then
and he does too. He apparently his time in Tampa, he was traveling around a lot, looking at a lot of prospects, and he had his eye on this guy for a long time. And what's even funnier to me is just the fact that Tampa Bay would be like, okay, yeah, go see all these prospects, even though you're not going to be anywhere near the draft table for us this year.
Yeah, I'm sure he collected some information that was like, all right, if you go somewhere else, you get it, we all get to share it. And he said, yeah, sure, it's fine.
That's possible, sure.
I mean, Tampa also has, I'm assuming at that point is thinking, well, we're going to be picking 30 or 31st anyways.
Right.
Yeah.
So big deal.
Oops. They end up picking, where'd they end up picking? They
didn't have a first, or they did have a first round pick. I'm sorry. There was like 24, 27?
Oh, 27.
Okay. Yeah.
It's interesting that it was 27, yet they lost so early in the first round. Why was it so? I thought that, I don't know. I always thought that it was wherever you lost in the playoffs was where you ended up getting slotted.
Yeah, it should have been.
Oh, it's the first two rounds. If you lose, then it's the best team goes 27 and lower.
Is it?
It's the conference finals. If you make it to the conference finals,
right.
then you're automatically 28, 29, then 30, 31.
Right. I forget about that.
So the first two rounds doesn't really affect your standings there. Well, before we jump into any of the big trades, I do want to just talk about, you mentioned Bowen Byram, taken fourth by Colorado, who had essentially a free pick. Like this was a freebie. I mean, granted, they gave up Matt Duchene, but they also have Samuel Girard, who's playing in their top four, so you'll gladly make that exchange anyways. They get this fourth overall pick, Bowen Byram, who is probably the only defenseman in this draft that is he's an assured top four defenseman. I think there's other guys that people go, well, yeah, he's a 3-4. This guy here, he has a chance to crack a top four, but Bowen Byram has a chance to be a number one defenseman. Now pair him up with Cale Makar and Samuel Girard. You've got Eric Johnson. You've got Tyson Barrie, who now probably is, I would think,
dealable because
maybe on his way out. Suddenly, Colorado goes from a weakness on defense. I mean, just think, before Matt Duchene was dealt 18 months ago from Colorado to Ottawa, Colorado had Tyson Barrie and Eric Johnson, and that was about it. They had like Ian Cole, and I mean they had
not much else.
some pretty low level guys, knowing that Cale Makar was in the weeds. He was coming. They get Samuel Girard. Now they draft Bowen Byram. Suddenly they look like is Colorado now the Leafs were looked at as that team coming, right? Like, man, they are going to be freaking good and they're going to be good for a long time. Is Colorado that team now? And maybe are they better positioned than the Leafs because they've got Nathan McKinnon signed to a long-term deal. They've got Landeskog signed to a long-term deal. They've got these young defensemen all coming in on cheap deals, ELCs, and now it's just a matter of filling in the rest.
Yeah, they're in a very, very good spot. Let's face it, they are loaded on defense. Young guys who are going to be around and potential, top 2, top 4 talents for a long time there. And like you said, McKinnon, he's on a cheap $6.3 million contract for, another 4 seasons. Like, what a freaking steal. The biggest question for Colorado moving forward is going to be, obviously they got to re-sign a bunch of RFAs, and they got some good names out there, obviously Rantanen, but JT Compher, Alexander Kerfoot, they all need new deals, and they'll get them signed. They'll get them locked up. It won't be a problem. But the only question mark I think I have now for Colorado is goaltending, right? Grubauer was good last year. I have no problem, but, he was up and down a little bit last year. So, if they get somebody back there in that can solidify, and, the free agent market now, we'll talk about it a little bit more, but there's a lot of goaltending names being floated around there. So they could pick up a decent guy to be like a 1B there, and they could be set for, next few years, no doubt. It'll be interesting.
Justin, they have $38 million in cap space.
Yeah, well, come on. You're going to give Rantanen $10 million, but...
Yes, okay. But the rest of their guys pretty negligible the amounts that they're going to get.
I think this Sunday, Artemi Panarin is going out to Colorado to visit, or maybe it's Wednesday. I can't remember. It's one of the 2 days. He's coming to visit. They could snag him up.
They just traded Soderstrom, right?
Yeah, they got $4 million off their books.
Yeah, granted they did pick up Kevin Connauton, which actually isn't a bad move. 5'6" kind of guy. At this point, when you do look at their defense and you go, oh man, they've got Ian Cole, Mark Barbiero, Kevin Connauton as some of their higher paid guys. It looks funny, but I do think there's some good guys, good bodies back there, especially with Gerard and Makar, who may end up being their top pairing.
Yeah, and I think they'll end up keeping some of that money on the back burner too when a lot of these higher end guys get off the books so that they can pay these D-men. But yeah, Colorado's pretty loaded moving forward for the future well.
Joe Sakic's done a nice job. Okay. Shall we get into the New Jersey Devils? Because I think they may have been the winners of the draft.
I would agree.
Because of what they did, not just drafting the best player in the draft, but also making that monster deal for PK Subban, which in reality was not that monstrous in terms of what they gave up for him. They took on a lot of salary. But I mean, really, 2 second-round picks, a 5'6" defenseman. It really didn't give up a whole lot. You have to imagine that now Nashville's going to use that cap space to go and do something pretty special.
Matt Duchene.
Maybe some Matt Duchene action up in there, but New Jersey comes in, top pick. They make the right pick, I think. I think Jack Hughes he's the obvious pick, I guess. And
that was the no-brainer. I mean, I think you and I both knew it. Even though we had our discussions about who might have actually been the better player, but long-term, it's better for the franchise.
And you know what? I don't even think he's going to play with Hall. I think you're just going to keep Heischer with Taylor Hall.
I would the first year going to start.
You would put him with Taylor Hall?
No. I would put Heischer with Hall to start. For sure. Yeah.
Well, and I don't know. Like, it's interesting because I don't know if we know who will be the better player, let's say 6 years down the road. Is it Heischer or is it Hughes? Because that's, 2 of the last 3 first overall picks, New Jersey Devils. And so that'll be an interesting story to see. I think Jack Hughes is going to get a little more love because he's an American guy and that just happens. But your thoughts on that PK Subban deal? Well, how does that change the balance of power maybe?
Well, I will say this. New Jersey has to do something in order to keep Taylor Hall because that's where my mind initially went when I saw this trade, right? They're making moves to say, hey, we're building, we're going to compete, we're going to be a contender here in the next few seasons. And, drafting a guy like Jack Hughes, bringing in a guy like PK Subban who can be a number one defenseman, which this team desperately needed. I mean, their top guys were Andy Green and nothing against Sammy Vatanen, but he's not a clear-cut number one in my opinion. He could number 2, 3, but
Andy Green and Vatanen, both UFAs at the end of this year too. So
yeah, should be interesting. But so now you bring in a guy like PK who not only is going to be a great number one, a guy who can handle all aspects of the ice in terms of on defense, but now too you get kind of like a bit of a showman in there, a guy that is entertaining, a guy who's fun to have in the locker room, right? And you look at Taylor Hall and you say, hey, not only are we building something for the future, but this is something fun, right? We got Jack Hughes in here, and I mean, they're having fun now too. I just went and I reposted today on our Twitter account. New Jersey did like this take on Jack Nicholson's Joker scene where he walks into the art gallery and is painting things. And it was hilarious, and
nice.
But you can see that they're kind of embracing this, this funness that's starting to come with drafting Jack Hughes and having PK Subban there.
Completely changes the room.
Absolutely.
And I don't get the vibe that Taylor Hall is the guy that wants to lead the room. I've never seen that from him. When he was in Edmonton, even into New Jersey, you think about, I mean, he essentially was traded for Edmonton because that we've lost for so long, we have to shake things up. And they said, well, let's trade the guy who we've deemed maybe to be maybe to be the guy who cares the least.
Yeah.
And by I don't know him. I don't know what his attitude is actually like, but there's a reason why.
Well, it's hard to be positive when you're in Edmonton at that time, so I understand.
But then he goes to New Jersey. He has a horrible first year, and he has a really hard time adjusting. You know, my assumption is that he's probably more of like an introverted guy. Probably not as like the super vocal.
Well, he's
guy
no
in the
PK.
room,
Like,
right?
I mean,
exactly.
when you talk about vocal guys.
So you're going to bring in a guy who is going to just totally shake up the locker room. You're going to take pressure off offensively, like during the game, because of having Jack Hughes, having a guy like PK Subban. What else are they going to do with the remaining $25 million in cap space when really they need to re-sign Stefan Nosen and Pavel Zacha? Probably the only two guys that they'll re-sign, along with like a Will Butcher, but those guys aren't getting monster deals. So I think you're still looking at, you might have, maybe you're going to look to sign somebody within the $5 to $7 million range, and if they can do that, I gotta think that Taylor Hall's probably going to stay. But also, are you preparing for Taylor Hall to leave and going, you know what, it's fine if Taylor Hall wants to leave, we'll trade him. They'll get a king's ransom for him, and they'll have their guys for the future.
Yeah, maybe you go out and you get another, a leader in that locker room like, Anders Lee, right? He hasn't re-signed in the island yet, so, maybe he wants to walk a couple miles down the road.
Trade for Anders Lee, make him captain.
No, you don't have to trade for him.
Or
free agent, sign him.
Sign him, yeah.
Right. Or maybe you tell Taylor Hall, hey, we'll make you captain when Mr. Green retires next year, and, hey, now you put an A on, on PK's sweater, and you make those guys the anointed leadership of the room. Not too bad.
Not too bad indeed. New York Rangers, obviously they take Capo, Kako, Ka.
Yeah.
And they, just with that pick, I think that the feeling in that locker room changes. They get Jacob Trouba, who they do need to re-sign to a long-term deal. He's an RFA. I've got $17 million in cap space.
He'll get the John Carlson money.
Yeah, he'll get that $7.5 million, $8 million, somewhere in there. It doesn't feel like, though, this Rangers team feels like they're moving to something. Like maybe this is all over. Like we took our guy, we're good. We're not trying to rebuild. We're trying to make the playoffs now. You've got Henrik Lundqvist. Is there a chance that this team goes out and is able to pull in one of these big name free agents?
That's the good question, right? I think for me, when I look at this Rangers team, I think, yes, there's, reason for optimism, right? You got Capo Kako coming in. You traded for Trouba, who is a surefire number one defenseman right now in this league. But at the same time, you're still the same Rangers team minus those two guys as you were last year, right? Now, we don't know what's happening with Kreider. We don't know what's going to happen with, Jimmy Vesey. There's talks of moving those guys. And so I'm interested to see what happens after those guys get dealt, because I think now that teams know where the cap is going to be next year at 81.5, and I think that's why we didn't see a lot of trades at the draft, is GMs were just scared of what the cap number was actually going to be.
It's just so stupid. Why don't they just announce it right before the draft instead of right after? Come on. Or they do it at the draft.
Right.
But just do it a week before or something. Like Stanley Cup's awarded next day, announce the cap. Or like after the parade or something.
Right. But anyways, I think Ranger fans, they're excited now because Trouba and Kako are here. And I think they'll want to see the rebuild happen quicker because, again, Lundqvist, 2 years left. And I think really that's the good hockey. You'll get decent hockey out of him for the next couple of years. But after that, he might retire. Who knows?
I mean, he's on borrowed time.
He
at
is.
This point.
Absolutely.
You know that it's just a matter of time before he has one of those seasons where you go, oh, shoot, he lost.
Well, I mean, frick, he's been playing 70 games every single season for over a decade. So there's that. But I think if you're the Ranger fans, though, don't go out and go crazy spending in free agency. Try to make some moves, acquire some picks, shed some money, and see what you can do. Because regardless what happens, yes, they got Trouba, but they still got, Mr. Smith back there on defense. You've got Mark Stahl. You got older guys with these bloated contracts that, maybe they might consider buying one of them out in the next buyout window. Who knows? Shattenkirk, is he movable? I doubt it. I don't know.
Not a guy I'd want.
No, I wouldn't want him either. But, maybe a team takes a chance on him. But, again, they do have some other good pieces on defense like Brady Shea, Adam Fox, Trouba, like with Anthony D'Angelo, these guys who can be potential, keys in their, their future. But don't get overly optimistic if I was a Rangers fan right now. I would be patient.
Yeah, and I think the Rangers are. This is exactly where you want to be. You've got a lot of guys, all these inflated contracts. They're veterans. They've got max 2 years left on them, and then you're out of them. So don't put yourself don't go out and try to sign Anders Lee or something less stupid like that.
Right.
Where he probably has peaked, and anything else you're going to get is just gravy. But Anders Lee probably not going to go out and get you 60 points. He's not going to go break career highs. That's just
no. And in 2 years, then you can make that push, right? When all these stupid contracts come off. And
I'll be honest though, there's one player that I would think that NBC, you've got someone up there. They are dying for Joe Pavelski to go sign with the New York Rangers or the Chicago Blackhawks. I have heard his name with the Chicago Blackhawks.
Well,
would he could be that they've kind of been really missing Patrick Sharp. Think about it. The last time that team was good, they had
the guy
good
that
Patrick Sharp.
Brandon Saad was supposed to be for them, but hasn't really turned out that way.
But man, he can go in. He could fill that second line center spot. He could play with Patrick Kane. Oh, be dirty. But you got to think, man. They would love to have him in New York.
I think
He would
30
fit so well.
one teams would love to have.
He would fit
Pavelski.
so well in New York. I mean, he wouldn't go there, I don't think, because I don't think he's going to go, I'm going to win a cup there.
No, and I think that's the thing. I think he's looking for a team that's willing to.
Let's scoop back
give him
to
a couple
New
years
Jersey.
and-
What a fit that would be.
To Jersey?
Can you imagine that they've got all the cap space? They could sign him to what if you just said, we'll sign you to a 2-year and we'll give you $7 million for 2 years. Wow. Man, you could go.
I wouldn't do that if I was Pavelski.
And you wouldn't do that?
No, because you're not going to win a cup in 2 years in New Jersey.
You don't think with the addition of him, you got PK Subban, you got
the
Jack
goaltending's
Hughes,
too questionable at this
Pavel
point.
Zacha is getting better, and then all you got to do is just find a goal, grab one of these goalies.
If they had a couple other pieces and a decent goalie, then maybe, yes.
And you know what? St. Louis, all they needed was a decent goalie, and they freaking got us ECHL.
Well, they already had all the other pieces, though. That's the thing.
But so did I mean, New Jersey isn't. All of a sudden, you get slightly above average goaltending, which is in reality, every team is like a dream season away from it. It's happened before. It happened to the St. Louis Blues.
But you look at Jersey, right? They've got the two centers now, right? They're missing everything on the wing.
They have Taylor Hall.
That's it. That's all they have, though. They have nothing
They
else.
have Pavel Zacha.
He's third line at
They've
best.
got Kyle Palmieri.
Not impressed. He had one good season. One good season.
I don't know if he's
I'm not reading into him yet.
completely unimpressive.
No, and maybe he's a second line guy, but you need a little bit more than that. St. Louis at least had Schwartz and Tarasenko, and they had other guys.
They have Nico Hischier and Taylor Hall.
But then they had
Taylor Hall's better
Shen
than
and
those guys.
Ryan O'Reilly, and they had a couple big studs on defense, and so I think New Jersey's still a couple pieces away. So they bring those couple
all
people,
of a sudden
and then
you add in Joe Pavelski's your Ryan O'Reilly right there.
Well, yeah, he would be attractive as a second
Their whole
line.
locker room's changed. You've got Hughes. You Subban and Pavelski coming into a locker room together. Oh man, I just feel like you could blow that thing up and really change things. But anywho, shall we? We wanted to talk about a little bit about goaltending.
Please, I love it.
There is a ton happening with goaltenders. Lots of them moving around. Sergei Bobrovsky, obviously the biggest name out there. He's met with the Panthers. It seems like he's going to sign with the Panthers, but is there any chance that he goes and he signs somewhere else? Is there another team that could sign Bobrovsky for the amount that he wants? It sounds like he wants his Carey Price money, right?
He probably does.
10 and a half, 11, maybe even 11.
Ooh, at 30 years old, hoo. Because he's probably looking for max
only
term
getting
too.
7. He's only getting 7.
Right.
So Carey Price's deal
Was 8 years.
It was 8 years, and he was what? He was 28 when he signed it.
Was he 28? No,
He's 31 right
Okay,
now.
he is.
And
Okay.
he's got...
But Bobrovsky's 30.
He's
So
30,
even
yeah,
at
but he
7.
signed a 7, so that's 37. Carey Price's deal is done when he's 37, and Carey Price has not been as good as Bobrovsky.
Well,
Bobrovsky
I won't disagree
deserves
with
a
you that
7-year, and someone's going to give him $11 million.
he's got a couple Vesnas, so there's
I mean,
that.
honestly, if I'm him, I go, I want $10.6 million because I want to be the highest paid goalie in the league. I deserve it.
There's a good argument for him to do that.
Percentage of cap too, slightly higher. You can give an extra 100,000.
And I do think Florida does have a bit of an advantage when you look at the no taxes, right? So
sure.
yeah.
So Florida could say we'll give you 9.5.
Right,
and
work
it
with us a
actually-
little bit because we want to sign other guys. Sure, totally get that. The only other team really that I think that he might have a shot at signing with is staying in Columbus. And I don't really know how the relationship ended there. But if you look at that team, they're still not really. I mean, they're a Matt Duchene and Bobrovsky removed from sweeping the Tampa Bay Lightning and being a legit team.
true.
So you have a decent shot. And they're, I mean, some could make the argument that they're a little bit further on their quest in terms of a cup than Florida is, right?
I don't know. I really don't.
I mean, I like the pieces in Florida better. Don't get me wrong.
Huberdeau, Barkov over. I mean, Duchesne's gone.
No,
I think he's gone.
I agree with you. And I like the pieces in
and
Florida
Panarin's
better.
gone. Panarin is not signing in Columbus.
No, not at all.
Not a
No,
chance.
No.
So
But
you're
again-
not going back to Columbus, who now has a whole bunch of secondary pieces because they built around those guys.
Sure. Yeah, but I mean, they could go out in free agency and maybe make an offer sheet to somebody. I don't know, but mute point. But again, Columbus is.
Do you think there's going to be an offer sheet?
We'll get into that because I have a lengthy opinion about that. So
Okay. All right.
I do think there's still a slight. I would probably say a 2.5% chance he goes back to Columbus, just because again
So he's
they've
not
at
going
least
back to Columbus.
they've at least won a series in the last couple of years where Florida has not. So there's that.
It's true, but I think Florida with a good goalie and you know what? Hey, you get to share the net with Roberto Luongo.
He's a character, so that'd be
probably
fun
be
too.
fun. I mean, I got to imagine Luongo's in the room.
Oh, absolutely.
Like he's going to be there during that interview process. He's gonna
He
go,
is that
"Dude,
franchise."
This is a freaking unbelievable place to play. Oh,
It's
did you want to
Miami.
go? Did you want to go to the beach after this, or did you want to go and like walk the streets of Columbus, Ohio, and like go to a football game? I'm sure that's not in a Russian's
It's the only
DNA.
thing to do in Columbus.
That's it. That's it. We could go to the Arnold's in February.
Arnold's.
Arnold, it's the bodybuilding
Yeah.
trade show essentially. Yeah. So okay, Bobrovsky though, Florida or bust, pretty much. Florida,
Pretty much.
maybe Columbus, but not probably nowhere else is going to give him that kind of money. Although Carolina should really think about it if they could.
They're not spending money on goaltenders.
They should.
They're thinking about buying Darling out too, by the way. So.
Yes, this is true. They have a few days to do that. Let's go with Robin Lehner. Let's talk Robin Lehner because it sounds like he's actually being courted by what I've heard Carolina that
Yep.
are interested in Lehner. Obviously, the Islanders still interested in keeping him. I haven't heard much else. Is there a chance he goes somewhere else, or is he just an Islander?
I think it depends on term, right? Because I know he wants to stay in New York with the Islanders, and I think that is the best spot for him because you look at what he's got. He's got Grice backing him up, and he's in a good situation there. He's got.
Or is Lehner backing up Grice? Who knows?
Well, yeah, who knows? But yeah, maybe he wants that number one shot again too. But he could always. I've heard rumblings, and I'm not sure if there's any truth to it at all. But Buffalo might still be interested in bringing him back. That would be interesting because it's not too far in terms of location, and you're familiar with that franchise. But what was the relationship like when he left?
Yeah, I
So-
mean, the guy was like suffering horribly with
Right,
depression.
and so that's
while he
the
was
thing.
there, right? And honestly, and Buffalo is actually at one point, I think it was like the gloomiest place to live in the country.
Oh, I've visited there multiple times, and every
Always rainy.
wintertime is ridiculous there. The ice that grows on the ground there, or not grows, but
Gross.
the ice that freezes on the ground there, it's thick as a hockey rink. Who wants to be around that crap?
No thanks.
The wind, it's ridiculous.
Okay, so let's assume Lehner and Bobrovsky are off the table. That probably takes Florida. That takes the Islanders.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense for him to leave the island.
No, it's the best situation, and I think as long as they give him 3 years,
they
he'll be fine.
understand him.
They do.
And they were willing to give him that chance. Like I think that's just a good relationship. Probably signs a 3-year deal there, maybe 4. The only way that I could see him leaving is if someone's willing to just like pony up and give him some
Right.
mad money, which I don't see.
No,
he had one good 45 game season.
Right. And he's in a team that has an opportunity to
super defensive too.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
That's where you go, well, if we bring him in, is like, was he that good or was it that system? Because Thomas Greiss played just as well.
Right.
So that leaves us with probably the Oilers, the Flames, the Hurricanes, the Flyers, Blue Jackets. They're all looking for a goalie. I don't think that Anton Forsberg in Carolina is going to cut it. Traded today to them for I can't even remember what the deal was. But Anton Forsberg went to Carolina. So I mean we're talking Mrazek, maybe Curtis McElhinney, Mike Smith. Does Mike Smith go back to Calgary, or is he out of there?
No, it's possible he goes back, but I think he wants, at this stage in his career, I think he wants an opportunity to be a number one still.
He could in Edmonton.
He could in Edmonton. He still possibly could in Calgary too, but I think maybe just it hasn't really gone as good as he had hoped in Calgary, and I think maybe going somewhere fresh would be better for him, at least to finish off his career. A place like Carolina would be pretty good because they've got a lot of good young pieces. They're a very fast team. They got a lot of good defensive players in front of him. So maybe you look at this and say, okay, cool. This would be a nice spot. Hang out on the coast. It's not Florida coast, but it's still the coast. And it's a lot happier place to live than I think Calgary. Really, it's snowy mess all the time.
When you consider the guys that are free agents. Semyon Varlamov actually played the second most games out of anyone that's a free agent.
Yeah, you're not hearing his name at all anywhere, which is shocking.
I mean, I understand. Like Grubauer had a good playoff. He didn't really have a good regular season until like March.
Right.
And so, I mean, that team was pretty garbage. It just so happened. I mean, I think of that relatively by chance. Grubauer got hot and the Avalanche got hot at the same time. Maybe it was that the Avalanche got hot because Grubauer got hot, but I think Semyon Varlamov could have had the same fortune. Like, I don't think that he's a bad goaltender.
No.
I actually think he's the biggest sleeper in this entire group. He's 31 years old. He might only get a 1 or 2 year deal out there. And then maybe a show me deal. And he would be a great 1B goaltender for a team that, maybe already has it, like a Philadelphia. For him going in, just, hey, we don't want Carter Hart to play more than 50 games. I think that's perfect for a Carter Hart. 45 to 50 games in the season.
But is he willing to? I mean,
is he willing to be a number two? I don't see why
he's gonna. I mean, you're talking. He's probably going to be $2.5-3 million. Is he willing to take that kind of cut?
I think what we're seeing at the goaltending position is a lot what the NFL experienced maybe like 7-8 years ago, where every team used to have this designated 30-plus carries a game running back. And now all of a sudden, you've got these teams that are running 3-man tandems.
Yeah, win by committee.
Right, and then like the New York Giants did it back when they won the Super Bowl. I think it was the first time. It was like Brandon Jacobs and them.
Their defense did it too, but
they had because I remember they had the what was it, like the Earth, Wind, and Fire or something like that, where it was like, here's your monster guy, here's your speed guy, and then here's the guy that you can just put in to get you these extra yards. They had 3 different types of guys. I mean, I think that the NHL, we're seeing, you've got your groups of teams that are going to the finals at this point. Boston, they were a 1A, 1B. Dallas, a 1A, 1B. I mean, granted, Ben Bishop was the guy. I guess I won't say a 1A, 1B for Dallas, but I'd say that it was very much like a 1B, 2A.
Yeah, but you knew you had a guy behind you could super rely on, right?
Sure, and I think it's so crucial, especially too. You're seeing goalies get. I think I don't have concrete facts to back this up. Maybe we can find this, but goalies seem to get hurt more now. It seems to be a tougher position to play. I don't know if it's because guys are getting run or if it's just because the game's getting faster and faster, and maybe because the equipment is smaller. Maybe there's something to that. But
sure.
It seems to me like having 2 goaltenders who are both number ones who can share the net makes sense.
Yeah.
Maybe the only way to really get there is to pay goalies more. I think at this point the league kind of goes, well, we'll pay these 3 guys a ton of money, but everyone else, they're kind of going to get this. I mean, think about like Frederick Anderson, top 10 goalie in the league. He's making $5.5 million a year. And $5.5 million a year right now buys you a second line winger. And yet he is the most important player on the Maple Leafs, perhaps. So you kind of have a little bit of a disconnect because they go, well, we could just bring in somebody else who could do.
Well, I think teams are scared to spend money on a starter because they know they have to rely on a backup, and you want to spend good money on a backup like we're talking about right now. Yeah. And so when you're spending good money on a backup, like for now, I mean, look, Cam Ward got paid $3 million last year to back up Corey Crawford, and I think injury, like you mentioned too, has a lot to do with that, right? Florida, Luongo goes down, right? James Reimer looked like garbage last year, so of course they fall out of playoff contention.
Yeah.
Now
but the whole point of having James Reimer was that they had a good backup,
right?
Which he has been serviceable in the past. Also, was Florida very good last year? No.
But again, now you turn your focus to a team like Montreal that's paying Carey Price $10+ million. When he went down, right? Okay, obviously last year they got a little lucky with Niemi having a decent season, but this previous season, Niemi was garbage. Anytime Carey Price was in the net, you were like, okay, Montreal's probably going to lose.
Yeah.
And the couple years before that, when he was hurt, it was just bye.
I mean, Boston's paying over $9 million for their 2 goalies. St. Louis, they're about to be paying over $9 million for both their goalies. Granted, that's because they signed Jake Allen to a bad deal. They overpaid him at one point, but I mean, it's interesting to look at, maybe like the New York Islanders, a team that have 2 good goaltenders. Robin Leonard was making, what was he making? He was making like 2.5 last year, 3.5 or something.
Yeah, not that much. 1.5 maybe. I don't know.
2.25, $4 million. $4 million.
Okay.
So I mean the Islanders were paying over $7.3 million for 2 goaltenders. So I mean you start looking at the trend of, all right, in order to be, I mean they advanced to the second round. I mean the Columbus Blue Jackets, they were paying Bobrovsky a little bit. They were also paying Keith Kincaid. You just look at these teams that made it through the first round, and most of them were paying their goaltenders more than $7 million a year in combined. Outside of, I mean, even the Carolina Hurricanes were, because technically they're paying Scott Darling. So, I mean, it's on the one hand, you go, well, it's stupid to pay, maybe a goaltender who hasn't proved you much $4.15 million like a Scott Darling, because you don't know what he's going to do when he actually becomes a starter. But you're hard pressed to find a team that went to the second round. I mean, even Dallas with Ben Bishop and Anton Khudobin, they were spending almost $7.5 million on goaltenders. And you go to some of these teams who are like cheaping out,
Yeah, not everybody's going to get lucky like Carolina, where they snagged McElhaney and got Mrazek on a show-me deal.
Right.
That's not going to happen every year.
I mean, you've got the Philadelphia Flyers, who, of course, like Carter Hart, better than a $730,000 goaltender, which is what they're paying Hart right now. But, I mean, they were paying Brian Elliott, Cam Talbot, Michael Neuvirth. Like, they paid 5 goaltenders last year. So, I mean, you can pay 5 goalies $7.5 million. Or you can get a couple good ones. It seems to me like the league has moved to a tandem goaltending system outside of course, like the NFL. You've got your couple running backs who run the show, and they're the man, and that's fine.
Even now in the NFL,
they're the outliers.
Yeah, well, even now in the NFL too, at the starting quarterback position, where they're paying their starters these ridiculous dollar amounts, $30 million a season to be a starter, but they're still going out and they're still spending good money on backups because, again, they know. Like, for instance, Washington with Alex Smith, he went down. They tanked, right? Mm-hmm. Luckily, Philly, when Carson Wentz was out, they had Nick Foles, right? So, again, with goaltending, it's the same situation. You have to have a good, reliable 1A, but you also have to know that, you can't make these guys play 70 games anymore. The athleticism, while it's still there, the rest of the league is getting better and getting more difficult, I think, to keep up with. And I think you just need to make sure that you have a guy who can play 35, 40 games maybe even at some point and still have, the ability to be fresh for the playoffs. So,
yeah, absolutely. I think the only team I don't think that there was one single team that made it to the second round that were paying their goalies less than $7 million in total. The teams that invested in their and
Carolina, I mean, technically they're two starters, but
Carolina was technically investing in their goaltending.
That's okay.
Granted,
if you want to go there.
Granted, they made a bad pick and it forced them to go with someone else.
What about San Jose? Were they paying?
San Jose is between Aaron Dell and Martin Jones.
Yeah.
They're paying almost $7.5 million.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean it's. But then you go to some of these teams, like, the Maple Leafs lost in the first round, and they're paying less than $6 million for their two goaltenders. Maybe it's not such a. Oh, by the way, Frederik Andersen only a $5 million cap hit. Even the San Jose Sharks, the Vegas Golden Knights, they're paying more than $7 million.
How old is Andersen going to be, if you don't mind me interrupting, when his deal's up?
Frederik Andersen will be 31 when his deal is up.
Okay, so he'll still be technically in that sweet spot for a goaltender to cash in.
And then you go and you look at the Calgary Flames between Mike Smith and David Rittich. They were paying less than $5 million for their goaltender. Right? Mike Smith was making.
He was making 5.6.
Okay, so but it's less than $7 million. It's $7 million. There's got to be something to that. That the teams that won in the playoffs were teams that spent money on goaltending.
Yeah, you keep your starters fresh in the regular season.
I mean, granted, yes, the Florida Panthers were spending more than $7 million on their goaltending. They were spending about almost $8 million, but missing the playoffs is a whole nother story for them. But I mean, even like a Minnesota, they barely spent $5.5 million on their goaltending. And it shows at some point. I think that really there's something to having a goaltender that you can rely on in the backup position, not because you're worried about injury, even just because you need to play these guys 50 games.
Keep
max.
them fresh.
Like if you said we have a cap 50 games, unless, like St. Louis, you hit March you're in dead last place. You just got to do what you do, and But
if he's hot, you keep him in.
But
Regardless
Jordan
who he
Binnington
is.
hadn't played in the beginning of the year, so it didn't really matter.
Right.
He was playing somewhere, but
regardless, if you're hot as a goaltender, you just keep riding him. But again, to just nail it home, just you got to keep those starters fresh.
Justin, even the Nashville Predators, only $6.5 million they lost in the first round.
No, that's Pekka's new deal. His last deal was ended this year.
7.
So, yeah,
7. All right. Well, they were spending more, and they didn't make it. So, but it seems though that there's something to spending money on your goaltending that puts you in a good position to win. At least we'll say. Anything else we want to hit on before we scoot out today?
The RFAs. I think we were.
Oh, yes,
I wanted to talk just
sheets.
a quick second about the offer sheets. So I got to thinking about it today, and I was listening to a couple Sportsnets and TSN's little podcast, shows and stuff, and I got to thinking about it a lot more. Right. First off, you talk about when teams offer up, right? They the compensation that goes along with it if a guy decides to sign and the team refuses to match the offer, right? For a lot of these RFAs, right, the high end guys that we're looking at this season, your guys like, Mitch Marner, Mikko Rantanen, Sebastian Aho, these 80+ point guys, they're going to command, you keep hearing the numbers around like $10, $11 million a year, like Marner's like, oh, I want Matthews money, and whether or not they get it is a whole other story, but the compensation you have to give up is going to be 4 first round draft picks, right?
And how many teams over the course of 4 years end up with a potential lottery pick?
Right.
Or a lot of it is a relative feat to make the playoffs 4 years in a row. Right. Nowadays, there's always 4 or 5 new teams that make the playoffs from the previous year.
But here's the other thing: most of the teams that have the cap space, right, usually don't have the picks, or they, or they're not competing for the playoffs. So a lot of these guys won't want to sign there anyways. But for instance, the one name that keeps coming up is Mitch Marner all the time, right? Because he's traveling,
because he's
going to go
Toronto.
visit teams. Yeah, I know, right?
He's going to visit teams. I know. To me, it's such a I don't know. Does it feel like this millennial thing to do?
It might be the millennial thing to
It's
do.
like fine, if you don't want to sign me, then I'm just going to go visit other teams. I mean, it's his right. Yes, he can do it. But
Yeah, but what NHL team do you know in 4 years and 4 first-round draft picks has never found a talent that has came to the NHL and made an impact, right? I don't know that we've seen it where teams have struck out 4 years in a row in the first round.
Right.
So, granted, Mitch Marner might be a great acquisition, but not only are you handicapping yourself, financially, but then you're also putting yourself in a bind future-wise by giving up all these draft picks. So, to me, it's not worth it. I think we've seen in the past, like a guy like Jacob Trouba, right? You could potentially, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but potentially, like for instance, Byram, right? He could potentially turn out to be better than Jacob Trouba, but yet all New York had to really give up was a couple pieces and a first round draft pick to get him. Yeah. So why not keep those first round picks and then make some deals down the road if you want to, or try to draft that guy?
That's a fantastic point.
It's stupid to me that teams are even thinking about. Now, I would understand offer sheets with guys a little bit further down the food chain, and
where all you're giving up is like a first, second, and a third.
Right.
Think
not
about
that
what
much.
Vegas gave up for a first, second, and a third. Or
Thomas Tatar.
Freaking Thomas Tatar. So, yeah, you could have done much better.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, a guy who's... I can't remember what is it called? Like where, the amount that you have to give up.
The compensation. Yeah, I think if you sign a guy like between, maybe it was 5 and 8 or something like that, it's like a first, second, and 2/3. I'm not 100% sure off the top of my head, but
yeah, I mean to give up a first, second, and a third, it's $6.3 to $8.4 million.
Okay. Yeah,
a first and a third between 4.2 and 6.3. There are enough teams in cap hell that you could potentially do that.
Now, absolutely. Now, one of them that pops in my mind right now, you could go out and snag is Timo Meier.
Timo Meier, Kyle O'Connor.
Right. Timo Meier, 66-point guy. You could give him that $7 million contract, and I think right now where San Jose is cap-wise, they probably couldn't match it.
They take a first, second, and a third for Timo Meier.
Yeah, that's pretty freaking good for a guy who, 22 years old, could potentially be a number one winger for your team.
I know. I mean, what about Patrick Laine? Offer him $8.4 million.
But he won't sign that. I think he wants $10 million. Not that I don't know if he'll get it, but that's what he wants. And so I don't think if a team came in offering, hey, we'll give you $7-8 million.
So 10.5, you'd give up 2 firsts, a second, and a third. Would you give up 2 firsts, a second, and a third for a Patrick Laine who struggled this year?
That's the thing. He's so inconsistent. Now, a goal scoring is a premium, and so maybe, but it's too much of a risk, I think, with how up and down he was.
How about Braden Point? Give him $10.5 million.
Oh, I would give him $10 million.
$10.5
I would sign him first over Marner just because he's a center.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and honestly, he scores. He scored 41 goals.
He does.
Marner had 26. And Marner did that playing with John Tavares.
That's true. So, and if you're a guy like Mitch Marner too, you got to ask yourself, what kind of situation are you getting into? You're in a pretty good one right now in Toronto, so why do you want to risk that anyways?
Right.
But,
I mean, obviously, Braden Point is in a good position in Tampa Bay too. He can take a little less money in Tampa and be in a great spot, but it depends. I mean, it depends on how much where you want to be and how much you want to make. I don't think that Braden Point is going to go anywhere.
And speaking of RFAs, I got to say, I actually really loved the Toronto deal to giving up a first-round pick to get rid of Marleau.
Yes.
Because if you really think about it, they give up a first-round pick to ditch Marleau's salary. Would you give up a first-round pick to get Johnson and Kapanen signed and keep those two guys on your team?
I think so.
Yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
Because you'd be looking for a first-round pick to get for either of those guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Probably one for each.
Absolutely. And they did it and they kept their salaries, both of their salaries, equal to what Marleau was making. So freaking win-win for Toronto right there.
Absolutely.
Loved it.
Absolutely. And the hope is that pick is the 31st overall pick.
Right. And you have to assume, too, that, right, at the very least, Toronto's first-round draft pick is going to be between 20 and 31. So
how about signing Charlie McAvoy to like an $8.4 million deal? Give up a first, second, and a third for Charlie McAvoy. And, I mean, if if Boston were to match it.
I would rather try to sign Zach Werenski personally, but that's just me.
Yeah, but Columbus will match it because
I know
Columbus
they will,
has
yeah.
all the space in the world.
They do, absolutely. Boston doesn't have that
And
much.
Werenski wasn't that good when Seth Jones wasn't around. I mean, but
Well-
Charlie McAvoy. I mean, Boston's got $12 million in cap space. If you put that hammer down on them, yes, they'll probably match. They'll find a way to match. But it's just funny to me that teams don't think about it. Teams go like this. Well, we don't want to put out these offer sheets because if we screw these guys over, they won't trade with me. Or we don't put these offer sheets out because someone will come back with a revenge and do the same thing to us. Well, guess what? You can't offer sheet a guy that you signed to an extension before, during the year. So what would it do? It would force teams to sign guys to extensions during the year or prior to the free agent week, like what we're seeing right now. So you sign your guy then, nobody can give your guy an offer sheet. There's no worries about that. If a guy won't trade with you, first off, there's about to be 31 other teams that will trade, or 30 other teams that would trade with you. Also, let's be honest. If you're offering a guy something that he wants, you really think he's going to say, nope, I refuse to make my team better because you screwed me over 3 years ago and I hate you? Come on. You play within the rules. You do I think that it's perfectly valid. You should do that. You should offer sheet these guys. Thing is that for Mitch Marner, I'm not giving up 4 first-round picks. And
No,
the
you have
only
to
way
find-
he's accepting an offer is if you give him 11 and a half to
Absolutely.
leave Toronto.
Yeah.
So I don't want to give up that much. I don't even think I want to give up that much. I don't know if there's anyone outside of Connor McDavid that I want to give up that many picks for. And what's Connor McDavid done for the Oilers?
Been part of half their points, half their goals. But it hasn't got them in the
Their
playoffs.
fortunes
But 1
haven't
year
changed.
No.
So it doesn't really matter. I don't think that it's almost like it's never, maybe financially it's worth it because you could bring in a guy who will sell all your jerseys. I don't think it's worth it for anyone. I don't think 4 first-round picks for Connor McDavid is worth it. Because I think that you can get 3. Just like what you said, you could take all those first-round picks and trade all of them for different players. And you've got 4 players. And guess what? Those 4 players, they can play more time than Connor McDavid can, than any other player.
Yeah.
I don't think it's ever worth giving up 4 first-round picks for a guy.
No,
Now, 2 first-round picks and a player here.
Sure.
And
you don't handicap yourself that much future-wise.
it's just too much.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just crazy to me that guys don't go, this team has this much cap left. I'm just going to put an offer sheet out there because they'll match it. That's fine. Then they won't be able to do anything the rest of the time. Then I go and I offer sheet one of their lower level guys and they can't do anything about it. And so then they're screwed. And then I get them.
Yeah, absolutely. And think about this.
You double it up.
Right. And think about this too, right? When we talk about not giving up 4 first-round draft picks, you got to think, right? If you want to go ahead and wait and trade for guys to try to build your team around those first-round draft picks instead, like this year, for example, right? Taylor Hall. Maybe he doesn't want to re-sign in New Jersey. Maybe he doesn't want to leave. So now you offer up a couple first-round draft picks, and you can get Taylor Hall for 2?
Right.
Frick, okay, cool.
And if Taylor Hall is being dealt at the deadline, you're probably only giving up 1 first, and you're giving up some higher level prospect.
Yeah, maybe.
That's only if he's willing to sign there, too.
Sure, absolutely.
That Carlson deal was laden with lots of extra things if he signed, which he did. So Ottawa gets extras, which it's good for Ottawa that he signs there.
Yeah.
Good for San Jose, too.
Not good for San Jose, I think, but that's just me.
Oh, well, we'll get to that next time. This has been Overtime Hockey Talk. We'll hit you guys up on Twitter. No, you hit us up on Twitter because, we'll hit you up if you hit us up, show you mine if you show me yours.
Wow.
See ya.